Hey guys, welcome back to Vinceville Customs. So today we're going to start a new work in progress series of taking the Sideshow Collectibles Black Canary Premium Format statue and turning it into a Velma from Scooby Doo. I really enjoy taking these superhero type statues and seeing what they would look like converted into like anime type characters, cartoon characters. And I think this is such a playful pose of Black Canary that I think it would work great for Velma. I know Velma is kind of like the shorter, stockier type character, but if you look online with a lot of girls out there for cosplay, you know, it doesn't really matter. Everyone dresses up as Velma, and I think it'll work out pretty well. And I think this pose would really fit pretty well, and I think it would look cool, especially nice little booty shot and everything for the character as well. She's kind of saying shush to be quiet, so I think that fits her as well. You could imagine her in like a haunted house, telling everybody to be quiet. And I think it should work. So we got a couple hurdles though, nothing too complex compared to the previous video I did of Jessie from Pokemon from the Poison Ivy where I had to chop down all the leaves. This one is pretty much straightforward. I think the hardest part of this is going to be this hand and the skirt, and I'll kind of explain that now. But as far as the breakdown of the character and the design of the statue, it's fairly easier compared to that. So, as far as starting off with the head comes off, that's removable, as you can see, it's magnetized. So this hair piece is actually glued onto this item. So I can actually put a screwdriver in here, we'll do that later in the garage. I could probably pop this head out and then basically take this hair, put it aside, and I have a nice fresh head to work on where I could build up the glasses, and we could work out some short hair on her. A little bit kind of wavy and playful hair, nothing too perfect like the cartoon. Now, as far as the neck goes, I'm going to have to kind of design how I want to do this neck because she's got this heavy sweater and it's basically like a turtleneck type sweater. So what I want to do is see where I'm going to do the turtleneck type look. You can see the key goes into the head like so. But what I'm thinking is I might actually chop down this part here, create a metal rod here, and actually have this go into the head like so. So this way I can actually create the turtleneck around the neck there, so this goes onto that. But that's something down the line I'll have to plan out when I start breaking her down. As far as this hand here and this hand over here, when I first saw the statue I was like, oh, I can have her holding up a magnifying glass, but it would look weird with that face and a magnifying glass. I think her telling you to be quiet works better. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to reposition this arm a little bit, and I have a friend who actually does really good wire armature for hands, so I might actually ask him to kind of build me a wire armature and I can sculpt over it. So I'm thinking maybe have her hand down on her like this, holding a magnifying glass, like it's kind of like at her hip like so. I don't know, I'm going to have to kind of design that a little bit, because this was kind of like a lot of people's complaints about this statue. They didn't really like this hand. And really, trying to have this hand here over the skirt would be kind of a pain. But I think if I could reposition this holding up a magnifying glass, that actually kind of works with the pose a little bit more. She's telling people to be quiet, but she still has that item she's known for type thing. So I think that should work out pretty well. Now, this is a leather jacket. Well, it's kind of like a fake leather. And you can see there's a seam over here for her arm and another seam over here. So the way they designed it is they paint it all up. It's casted in separate pieces. They put the jacket on and they glue this arm in. They go over here and they put a couple of dabs of glue, and then you got the jacket there. So since I'm going to kind of reposition this arm anyway, I'm going to snap this arm. And then this way I can actually salvage this jacket for like another custom down the line if I ever need to. So that's something I always do, throw it in my box of parts. We'll have a nice booty shot for her. So you can see her outfit here. I'm going to keep this. This spandex stuff, I mean this fishnet will come off, but there's a seam line here on the back of her leg where they actually tucked in this fishnet. I'm going to have to fill in that seam. But we'll keep this here for like the undies and everything. So this way it'll be a short skirt and you can kind of see what's there. It'll be kind of like fun. Now as far as the boots go, that really shouldn't be too bad per se. If you look at the boots, you can pretty much see how that's going to work. I'll have to chop these boots down because we're not going to have these. I'll rebuild the ankles and stuff in all this here, and then we'll keep her with she has those strappy shoes. So They'll be high heel shoes, you know, and then the socks will probably come up to just below the knees. I think that's where they're at, or they're above the knee. I forget. I mean, whatever it is, I'll work on it. But that's pretty much it. I think it's going to be a fun series. The next step is going into the garage and breaking this all down. Now, as far as the base goes, I'm not a fan of complex, elaborate bases. It's just not my thing for like displays. So I like to keep everything simple and focused on the character. So I might leave the base as is, or as I'm working on the character, if something pops in my head, I might make another generic base and maybe do like an etching on it, or maybe make something else. I'm not really sure. Maybe like leaving this here, like this base could actually work out. It's almost kind of like, you know, some kind of haunted like ruins area. Maybe throw some Scooby snacks on the ground or something. So I don't know. I'll come up with something. We'll see how things work out. But that's where we're at for now. This should be a really fun project. It's got, like I said, it's a really fun, playful pose. I really like the statue a lot. I have one in my other room as part of my collection. I actually got this one fairly cheap, so you never know when something like this will pop up and I got an idea. But next step, going into the garage, we're going to break this all down. Some people might cringe on that, but that's part of the fun of the hobby, breaking it down and rebuilding everything back up. So let's get in the garage, we'll chop this down, and we'll get on to the next steps. Alright, so we're in the garage. Excuse the fan behind me. It's freezing outside, so I'm trying to warm everything up. I'm ready to start breaking her down now. And first things first is I'm going to cut off this hand here, because I just know moving her around, doing all this stuff, I'm going to snap that finger, and I don't want to do that. So it's better to get this cut off now. I'm going to cut it like right here, not down here underneath the glove, but right here between the glove. Because you figure her sweater is going to be coming up around there anyway. Plus, having her hand off the statue is going to help me actually take down a lot of this glove, because, you know, Velma doesn't wear gloves. I'm probably going to cut off this hand too, because I have a funny feeling that if I try to pry this arm off, which might work though, I don't know, we'll see. I might break these fingers. I don't want to break it, you know, just because I'm not using the hand doesn't mean I need to break it or anything. So I might saw that off over there as well. So it's fairly simple, just to make life a little bit easier. Kind of turn her over like this. Get yourself a saw. Now I'm just making sure that like anything I'm holding her, I'm not snapping anything else, because if she had another hand over there and stuff, you might break it off. So basically, this is just like a metal saw. Just go nice and slow. Just let the blade just do its thing. The reason why I'm putting a paper towel there now is because I don't want to rip the jacket. Like I said, I want to salvage the jacket for something, but I don't want all this dust to go over it. Now it's resin dust. If you really, you know, if you can, what I normally do is I'll have like a shop vac next to me somewhere, and I'll have all that stuff getting like, whatchamacallit, hit up with the shop vac. Now the one thing you got to be careful of is when you start getting down to that low area of the resin, like when you're getting ready to saw it off. See, I'm holding her arm, but I'm not holding the hand. What'll happen is, if you're not careful, the hand will fall off and roll somewhere, and you'll break the finger anyway. So you got to be very careful. And you don't want to go too fast, because I don't want to saw off my finger either. So I'm kind of going all over the place. I'm trying to... Now, if you want, you can use a Dremel tool. If you want to go with a Dremel tool. I just like using the saw because I get a nice flat area. Because I'm going to be making a magnet system with it anyway. Now you want to kind of get where... Now we're pretty close down there, so we'll see if it kind of breaks off. And it does. So I salvaged it, I got it off, and we're good to go. Next step is... grab the shop vac. Sorry, kick this on. Alright, next step. Let's see if we can get the arm off. Now, I'm kind of hoping that maybe I can kind of pry this arm off like this. Like that. Boom. Hopefully I didn't go through the jacket. Nope. Okay. So if we're lucky, we can kind of pull this jacket off like so. Alright. Now what I'll do off camera is I'll probably saw off this hand here, because actually if you look, it actually is glued on there. There is a seam here, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to get this jacket on. So I salvaged the jacket, so that's good. We'll put that aside. And next step is looking at the way this, because you can kind of see how this has got some like weird plastic here. I'm not really sure why there was plastic there, but you can see how the key went into that arm. So I just pretty much broke the key off. Alright, so before we do any dremeling work, let's see if we can pop the head off. So like I said, the head is attached into the hair. So if we get lucky, let's see if we just do this first. Nah, I don't have enough give. So let's grab the hammer. Let's put her over here. Let's see, because now the other thing too is, if you pop this off and you're not careful and the head goes flying, you'll break the nose or something, or the ears or whatever, and we don't want to do that. So let's see if we can, boom, there we go. A little pressure, so you can see the key went in back of the head is sort of in half, and there was a huge key back here. So this worked out well. I can salvage this hair for another project down the line, or if I never need it, you know, you never know, maybe this could be a good base for something. So my next step is, what I'll probably do is, I'm not going to strip down the paint on the statue. I'm actually going to strip down the paint on the head, only because the way the eyes are and all this stuff over there is probably like a lot of, you know, primer and stuff. So I probably will strip down the head at least. Now, next step is the one where I'll be getting messy and I'll have it going fast. I'm going to cut this off with an X-Acto blade. I'll go get a nice sharp X-Acto blade. Try to see if I could cut these off as best as I can around the seams. Get these off here. And then I'm going to grab my Dremel tool and I'm going to Dremel all this out, and then I'll have to rebuild these legs. So that's where we're at with that. And yeah, so I think we're pretty good at that sense of getting it pretty much prepped up. I also did think about the foot. The way this is set up in here, I don't know if this metal rod comes up to this leg to here or if it just goes to right there. Because if I'm looking at it, it does go to right about there. If they bent it and they casted it up, that's great, but I highly doubt it. So I'm probably going to have to utilize the peg system the way it is. You know, that's just how it's going to work. So let me get this cut up, and then we're going to have to get on my mask. We'll have to get the shop vac next to me, and I'm going to have to grind down all these legs. So it's time to start actually rebuilding her legs. So you see I pretty much chopped out the boots here, so I need to rebuild these legs, and I also need to fill in the seam line where they put the fishnets into on the back. I don't need to worry about anything up here. Like I said, we're sculpting onto that, but right now we're going to focus on getting these legs back together, you know, the basic muscle structure and the calf muscles and all that, and then from there we can actually start working on the shoes and socks and everything there. Now, anyone new to my videos, what I like to sculpt with is called Abe's Epoxy Sculpt, and also Abe's Fix-It Sculpt. Now, the difference between the two is this one is pretty much the regular epoxy sculpt. It's very soft. It's great for kind of just doing your basic stuff. Fix-It Sculpt is what I mix for like sculpting hair. It's just a little bit more durable. It doesn't like stay super soft, and it doesn't like flop down as much. You'll see as time goes on. So the way this works is you mix A and B together. You have about a 2-hour work time, and after that, it starts to harden it up. And after 6 to 8 hours, it's hard as a rock, just like resin. You can sand it, you can prime it, paint it, and it's ready to go. It's really great for this type of stuff because this is polystone statue, which is basically resin mixed with stone powder, and it's very hard and durable. But the problem is like you can't get back in there and retweak stuff because it's not its clay form. You know, there's a couple thousand of these produced. So the Abe's epoxy sculpt, you have this side, which is the B side. It always looks like a greenish gray. And then you have the other side, which is A. This is red. Now the reason why I get red is because I can see it better on my statue. They have many different colors. They have whites, blacks, browns, greens, naturals, all kinds of colors. I just like the red because of two things. One, it's easier to see, and sometimes it's cheaper on the website. Fix-It Sculpt comes in colors too, but I just get the regular natural because what I do is I put a little bit of the red mixed in with the Fix-It just to give it like a pink hue. So you can see right here, this is some Aves that has some of the Fix-It mixed in it. This has been dried for like weeks, but you can see it's durable. It's not soft and bending, and it can break, but you can see what it's like. Now, I'll be using safety solvent throughout my process of sculpting. Safety solvent is made by Aves. It is the best, I think, chemical for mixing Aves. Some people use alcohol, some people use water, other people use other stuff, but I do know that I talked to the owner of Aves. He says that, you know, if you mix it with water, it breaks it up. I've done some tests with it too. I find that if you put too much water into it, when you go to work on it the next day, it brittles and cracks and breaks off your item. So it's best to buy their chemical they use for it, safety solvent, and I have no issues with it. So that is pretty much what I use to sculpt and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up a nice little batch of the regular Aves for now. I'm just going to pretty much wrap it around here, sort of kind of work out the leg muscles and stuff. And then what I do is the next day when it's all cured up, or I get a chance in the garage, I'll pretty much sand it down and kind of shape up the leg a little bit more, clean it up, and then from there I might have to go back in and patch here and there and keep going. And then once I get it to where I want it, that's when I'll start designing anything else I need to do on her, because I also chopped out her neck. I got to design it where she has her neck at the point of there is a big, collar of her sweater up there that's holding up her thing, so this way the head kind of just goes right into it. So that'll be next, but for right now I want to focus getting these legs secured, because I always get a little bit worried when I kind of chop out stuff that if it's not secured. I'm also going to put a metal rod here and a metal rod in here just to kind of make sure this kind of locks into place just a little bit, just to be on the safe side. You really don't have to, but I just drumbled out a little bit there anyway for now. So I just get on a pair of rubber gloves, I mix up the A's, I just sit here, wrap it around, get it on there, and I just put her aside, let her dry up, and then I'll shape her up in the garage whenever, and by the time we come back, maybe the legs should be pretty much ready to go, and then we can work on the next part. So I had a chance to get into the garage and sand this down, as you can see. So it's not perfectly smooth. There's a lot of like scratches and stuff, but that's okay because these are going to get wrapped around with the Aves anyway, and we're going to create socks on her, knee-high socks. So at least gives you an idea of like where this red stuff is, like how the socks would look on her, which is kind of cool. I'm going to keep the shoes flat, squared like this top. I kind of like the way that looks. I think once we add the straps and the heel part and stuff, it would kind of be like cool looking shoes. I do have to prime it up though anyway, because I need to make sure this back seam areas are nice and you know, smooth, because there is a lot of scratching going on right now. So I got to clean all that up. So a couple more steps I have to do is looking at a lot of her artwork. I should have realized this. Her sweater comes down to here, so I actually should have cut the arm here instead of up here. It's not the end of the world. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill through here, get a nice you know, hollow area, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the hand back on her to line it up with the head correctly. And then what I'll do is I'll create a magnet key system in here, so this way when I sculpt the sweater, I won't have this area in front of this to try to get between here, so it'll make life a little bit easier. Now you may be asking, why is there a weird gap under here? When you put that cloth jacket on her, this gets all hidden, otherwise it would never work. So that's kind of why they designed that. I did strip down the head. So the head is all stripped down with some acetone, and then I cleaned it up, and then I had some extra A's one night, and I filled out the back of her skull. So I need to just sand around this seam line here. I'm not worried about the back, because this will be all hidden. Now, there's a few things that I'm going to do a little bit different with this video, which is kind of fun. My one friend, he's pretty much backed up, so I asked him to do a wire armature for the hand. It's not really going to work out. So my friend who actually owns a 3D printer, he sent me a website where you can buy STL files, all kinds of files. There's just a surplus of just 3D sculpts out there, which I figured this was going to happen sooner or later in the hobby. So we're going to try this out. I'm going to actually do some measurements for her head for a pair of glasses. I'm going to do a measurement for her right hand, and then we're going to do a measurement for a magnifying glass. Now he's going to take those measurements and try to print out a couple versions of a right hand, a set of glasses, and also a magnifying glass. Now, he's mentioned to me that when I get them, they're not really dremable or custom friendly. You could kind of paint them, but for what I need to add them on, it won't work. But I said it's not a problem. I could just use throwaway molds, and I can make copies of those things and make a good resin copy, and then I could put those resin copies on here. So we're going to see how this project works out with that. If it does work out, it opens up a world of possibilities for customs. Like if you get a statue and you broke a hand, or you didn't like those hands and you wanted them like clinched, or you wanted them open, you could go onto this site and buy the files for a couple bucks, print them out, and you got yourself like hands or elements or bags or all kinds of stuff. So this is kind of where the hobby's going and way things are working, so we might as well kind of jump onto it and see if we can work it with this project as well. So next step is I'm going to just keep plugging away, fill up the ankle areas, recut this, and we'll just kind of keep plugging away and get her all, you know, engineered and prepped up, and then we can start working out detailing and sculpting. Okay, so we're going to create magnet systems now for the left arm and also the head. The right arm is still kind of a little bit delayed. I'm working on that down the line, but for right now I want to get ahead of the game and get like a lot of this engineering done. So you can see right here, I already started this head the other night because I had to add a lot of extra A's, and I just went ahead and got it done. So I added a piece of steel key stock into this head already. Now, this is a key stock. Now you can get this at a lot of hardware stores. You can order it online. This stuff says zinc plated. Now, even though it's zinc plated, it's still steel and it's magnetizable. So you can see the magnets stick to these with no problem, and they're really tough. There is a key stock that is pure zinc. Those will not magnetize. And I've seen also a key stock where it says steel. So you just want to make sure you get the ones that are magnetizable. If you go to a hardware store and they have it, bring a little magnet with you just to test to make sure they work. But you just want to make sure if you're creating a magnet system, you're getting steel, even though it says zinc plated. Now these are like steel rods, but what it is, it's like zinc over, I guess, on top of it to give it, like, stop it from rusting, I guess. I think that's what it's for. And the other stuff you need is K&S hollow brass rods. I forget all the specific sizes, but for the smaller one, for the 1/8 key stock, number 152. And I think if you go up to the 153 or 154, I think is the larger one for the 3/16, I think. I don't know. I can find my old video on my channel and link in the description that explains a little bit better. Now, You also need magnets. Now you could go on eBay, order tons of magnets, or Amazon, wherever you want to go. I already just ordered them on eBay. I find tons of different sizes from one seller, and I order a bunch. You need N52 magnets, not N50s or the 40s. You want N52, that's the stronger ones, and they last longer, and I haven't had an issue with them. So, as you can see, I put the rod in here in this head here, like that, and this is the larger hollow piece. So what I need to do is put this rod here like that, not all the way down. I'm going to cut it to about the neck area, because I don't want this going all the way down there. I mean, I guess I could if I want to keep it hollow. We'll see. I haven't decided yet. So, like, if I did go all the way into there, you know, you could kind of give a little bit of an adjustment. So, I would probably have to cut the rod, like, about there or something like that. Now, you don't need, you don't need a Dremel tool or crazy saw to. If you have a nice metal saw, you can cut this off. You go nice and slow without crushing, because if you crush your square, it won't go onto the rod. Now, you can see this rod right here, trying to put this on is tight. That's because there's a lot of like gunk at the bottom in here, and it's a little bit bigger. So if you have a Dremel tool or sandpaper or something, you kind of sand around the edges and fine tune it, and it should go on no problem. So we're gonna do the I'll show you how I set up this hand, that where it go. You can't just put A's or Magic Sculpt in there and just throw it in like that and have it at an angle. It's not gonna work. You have to actually line it up correctly, straight. You have to make sure it goes straight into the forearm area, and then after that's done and it cures up for the next 8 hours or so, you can create the magnet system. But we're going to create this one as we go anyway. So let me go in the garage. I'm going to cut this up. We'll come back and I'll show you how we line everything up and start working out the magnets, and then just kind of do one step at a time before we start doing all the sculpt work. Alright, so the way this works is you have your rod over here, the square hollow rod. You cut it. You make sure it goes onto here, no problem, right? So it slides on, no issues. Nice and clean, smooth. You have a little bit of the steel kind of hanging off at the edge, just a little bit. You want the magnet being able to touch the steel like that, as you can see, right? So 2 magnets is fine because this is the head, it's up top. It's not, you don't need this crazy super strong magnet system with the rod. As long as the head goes on there and it hits these 2 magnets, it stays on pretty well. If you're the type of person when you want to create that thicker magnet like a Sideshow does, like it was before, that's fine, but this is going to work fine. Now, the reason why I decided to leave this inside like this is because I need to keep her, hold her up with another rod, because what I'll do is I'll cut off a thicker piece of the brass rod, and I can actually hold her while I'm sculpting the hair. So that's also something, because if you have something here that you can't really hold it and you're trying to sculpt the hair, it'll be a nightmare. So this is fine the way this is going to work like that, right? So you take some Magic Sculpt. I mixed up a fresh batch. We'll do this hand next. But what you do is grab some water, flatten out your Magic Sculpt like so, or A's, whatever you have, it doesn't really matter, and just wrap it around the area like this. Okay? Make sure you cover the magnet. You don't want it to do super thick, but you don't want it to do paper thin. You just enough that it goes around the area like that. Now I'll let this cure up for the day. And what I usually like to do though is at the bottom, see how it's kind of flat there? So when I go to push this into the neck tomorrow to kind of lock this in place, because it's flat, it's going to be kind of a nightmare. So if you want to give it like sort of like a point, it kind of helps push the A's or whatever you use to go. So you just kind of do that, and you have sort of like a system. So let's kind of take the camera, move it up without falling down or breaking anything. Like so. Okay. Go down a little bit. Okay, come back. Alright, so what will happen is tomorrow, once this is cured up, what we do is we put A's in there, nice soft A's, and we squeeze this in here and we try to get it clean. And then what happens is when you pull it out, this metal rod and these magnets will stay in there, and then you create a magnet system. So that's kind of how that's going to work. So we're going to let this sit on the side and cure up. Now, for this piece here, this is a little bit more tricky. Like I said, I cut my rod and I also kind of buffed out the bottom of the piece. just because you don't want to any sharp edges. So what we do is we take some Magic Sculpt and we put it into the area like so. Grab whatever tool you got. Doesn't have to be completely flush, so we go down like that. Now, make sure you have the correct end, and you put this in here like so. Alright, now if it squeezes around the edges a little bit, if you have a tool, whether it's A's, just kind of seam it up, push it, and go from there. Now, you can't just do that and walk away and say, okay, I did it. You want to actually play with the item and making sure you're lining up correctly. So I'm kind of like going back and forth, so I know it's kind of bent down a little bit, so I'm going to kind of push it like so, like that. So you want to make sure that whatever you're doing, it's sort of as straight as possible in there, right? So I'm going to turn it this way now, and I can see that, like looking at it, it's bent a little bit the wrong way. So what I might have to do is kind of come in here and sort of kind of push it this way a little, pull it down, go back with some of the paintbrush, squeeze it a little bit. So you're trying to basically line this up as straight as possible. So I got to push that a little bit this way, turn it back this way. This kind of comes up. So I'm going to have to do this a little bit off camera because I have the camera directly in my face and I can't really, line it up. But you want to do this as best as possible and then let it cure. So this way, when you create the magnet system like we just with the head, it'll go in there nice and even and straight, and then we'll be able to do a removable system with this here. So that's what you want to set that up. So always make sure you're lining everything up correctly in every area. You always turn your item, keep turning, making sure everything's lined up. And then when you go to lay this item down, so this is a mistake I made when I first did this stuff. When you go to lay your item down, make sure it is not hitting here. So if this was, like say this is in here in the rod and you put it down and you're not careful, the rod will come up on you like so. So you want to make sure that this is not hitting anything or it's kind of leaning on it or whatever. So make sure you put this somewhere. If you're really concerned and you have some kind of a setup, you can kind of hold it and you could put this somewhere and have her sort of stand up like that and cure, whatever. So whatever works for you, you do. So I'm going to line this up correctly off camera. I'll get this set up, come back tomorrow, create the magnet for this, clean up the neck and everything, and then start really cleaning up some areas, probably work on this handle a little bit, and then really start planning out that right arm. That right arm is going to be one of the more complex areas to figure out how to do that. Okay, it's the next day, and what I did is I cut up rod and I put 3 magnets here, and I did a little bit quick test. I got some extra A's Fix-It Sculpt. So 3 magnets is fine. It's going in this direction downward, so when you do something like that, 1 magnet would be fine. But if it's going to go upwards and it's holding down to like the person's side, then you want enough magnets to make sure you hold the item. So that's why I always get these smaller magnets or larger magnets, because you never know if something's going to be bigger or larger than what you need. So it's always good to have a surplus of magnets for any kind of a situation. So now, because this arm is not really super thick, you got to be very careful when you put your Magic Sculpt or A's or whatever you have around the locking system. So just take some of this A's Fix-It and we just go around this area like so. Just go around enough that it kind of locks it into place, but not really super thick. Because if you do too thick and you can't get it into that area, you're going to run into issues. So this is good enough. And a little bit of a point at the top, so this way when we squeeze it in, we're good. Now if for some odd reason you add too much here and it can't get into the hole, instead of making your area bigger and it makes it too like flimsy and then you break your area when you kind of try to squeeze it in, you can sand this down a little bit till you get it to where it fits. Probably what I'm going to do is, since I got a little bit of this Fix-It left, I'm going to kind of work out this wrist area off camera just to kind of fill it in a little bit. And then I'll let it dry just like that for the day, and then hopefully next couple steps we can start installing the stuff into the statue. So time to install these pieces. So you can see this is the next day, and that connects no problem. So, and I made sure that this fits in here with no issues, because like I said, if you make this too thick, sometimes it might like line up not correctly. So you got to make sure you have some kind of a give. Same thing with this one up here. That lines up pretty well where we need it to be. So I just mixed up some Magic Sculpt. I'm just going to put it in there. We'll do the arm first just to make sure I have enough for this piece. So the only downside of putting in Magic Sculpt or A's in here is you got to be very careful. You can't fill it in too much, because if you fill it in too much, then you can't get the piece in there. Now, I'm kind of doing this with the camera in a way. So what I like to do is sort of make a little give and then do a test. Make sure that, you know, we're getting in there. So you can see, really didn't put that. I really drumbled the hole pretty down there. So we want to put a little bit more in there. Now, A's, Magic Sculpt, whatever you got, it doesn't really matter. It'll work pretty well. I like to use just the Magic Sculpt because it's a little bit tougher. So if you put too much in and you try to squeeze this in here, what sometimes happens, see how it's squeezing upwards? You might lock it into place by accident. So what you got to kind of do is, if you're lucky, it pops right back out. And you can kind of just pull some of this out, like so. And then you can put this back in there. Some more squeezing up. It's not the end of the world. So if you're lucky, and if it stays in there pretty well, you could kind of pop it out. So see, I popped it out and it stayed in there. So you take a paintbrush and sort of get that area. Now I'm going to have to go in there a little bit off camera and fill in some of the area over there that's kind of missing. But what I'll probably do next is, now that I got this in there and we're kind of lined up where I need to be, what I'll do is I'll probably throw some baby powder on there and leave this there for like an hour or two, just so this doesn't bond. You want to make sure this doesn't bond to it. And if you keep playing with it though, if you keep popping in and out, you might pull everything out as well if the magnet's really strong. So I'll kind of show you there. So you can see there's a little bit of a tiny little gap right there. So what I'll, like I said, off camera, I'll get in closer and I'll put a little bit more Magic Sculpt in there. I don't know if I have too much Magic Sculpt mixed or not enough. We'll kind of see right now. And we'll try the head. Sure, lining up correctly where it needs to go. And you can see it through a lot of... So you just got to keep going that route with it and just getting the piece in there. If there's any Magic Sculpt that sort of sits on here, you can kind of take it off. So I got the camera in the way, I got to kind of get out of the way, but just going to keep getting there and just squeezing this part on to get it set up. And then so I was just in the garage. As you can sort of see, I'm actually starting to prime up the legs and everything. I want to see if I can find some scratches, especially the back area. We'll go over that in a second. So I was working out this hand a little bit. You know, I primed it up. I chopped up some of the glove. I'm kind of shaping up the fingers a little bit more. So I got to do some putty work and clean this up as well. So throughout this project, you're going to see me using gray filler primer from Duplicolor. Why? Because I love this primer. It goes on smooth. It's wet sandable. I really never have any issues with this stuff, whether it's going to be tacky, cracking, or any of that stuff. It's absolutely amazing. I use it pretty much for everything. They have a red oxide filler primer, but I use that for kits. When I build my customs, the reason why I use the gray is because when I use the red A's putty, I can see what I'm doing compared to both colors. Now, if I throw red oxide primer on it and then I'm using the red A's, you kind of don't really see what you're doing. They're kind of so close to each other because it's kind of like this color here from previous paint-ups. So it's kind of hard to see what's going on. So that's why I like to use the filler primer. Also, too, you know, if you have residue on your hands from the red A's and you're touching the item, you'll see little spots all over your item that you might not normally see with a different color. So that's kind of like why I do this stuff. So filler primers, which you're going to see throughout the whole project. It's a little expensive, but if you order it online, usually from like a Pep Boys or an auto parts store or something, and you use coupons and discounts or stuff, you could get them fairly cheap. So they're not that bad. But like I always say, I think with primers, you get what you pay for. If you're going to cheap out and buy like a $2 can of spray primer and spray an item, it might be tacky forever. It might react. It's just cheap. So, you know, spend a couple extra bucks to get a good primer. There's also a lot of other primers out there through an airbrush that work just as well too. So do a little bit of research, but this personally is my favorite. but other people might have issues not like it. I think the only time I ever had an issue with Duplicolor filler primer is if you don't shake up the can enough, or maybe it was sitting at an auto parts store for like a year or so, and you go and spray the item and all this like caked up gunk comes out of it, like almost like sandpaper. That's because something in the can was either old or you didn't shake it up enough. But I shake the hell out of my cans before I use them. I never leave them in my garage in hot weather or cold weather. I always keep them in my studio at room temperature, just so none of the paint in the inside gets messed up. So that's a little bit of a tip. Now, I did have a little bit of an accident. Sometimes this stuff happens. She got away from me. I was priming her up, and I didn't have her on the base because I forgot to route the base. So I figured I could just kind of prime her up and leave her. So when I had her on the airbrush boost, she sort of slipped and fell, and her left arm popped off. Now, this stuff happens from time to time. It's not the end of the world. So it doesn't really matter too, because I'm going to get some A's right now and a rod. I'm going to put this back onto her and everything. And even if there's a little seam line or crack, it doesn't really matter because it's going to get covered with the sweater anyway. But as you can see back here, there is some issues here and there, nothing major. So we got a little bit of air bubbling right here, tiny little air bubbles that were probably there from previously. You can kind of sort of see the seam line still here. So I had this stuff called Tamiya Gray Basic Putty. And I also have this little spackle rubber paintbrush. You can use this for all types of sculpting and paints and whatever you want. They have them at art stores. I've had this paintbrush piece since art school back in 1995 when I went. So this thing is still going strong to this day. So usually what I do is anytime you see, if I ever get a scratch, an air bubble, or something's going on with the item, you just take some of this gray putty. Sometimes the stuff dries on you right away at the top, but other than that, it's fine. And basically, I just go around the item like so. So I just go around here, you know, so there's little air bubbles. You kind of sit there and kind of like smush it in, like push it into the air bubble. And then I'll get some nice fine sandpaper later once this dries. This stuff dries fairly fast. If you put on super, super thick, it's going to take longer. But you see how I'm kind of like going like this with the putty? Not only am I like spackling it onto those areas, I'm also helping it dry faster, getting some air into the item. If you just kind of like squeeze it onto the item, the outside dries, but the inside really doesn't as much. You really want to kind of like spackle it, give it some drying time, stuff like that. So that's kind of what I'm doing. Now the thing is, you got to use some finer sandpaper. So there's all this, you know, there's all like 3M, like ultra fine sandpaper is fine. We'll go over that a little bit later. But, you know, it's just kind of going around this item and filling up this line here. Now this isn't really great for like sculpting. So like say there's like, this is an item, so you have it's kind of like a curved skin. So right now it's kind of curved, but it's kind of flat up top because of the aves and stuff. So if you try to sculpt with this to make a curve, it doesn't really work that well. But if you kind of re-sand it down and stuff a little bit, it kind of works. So you got to just kind of play with it and get used to it. It's a really great putty. Get it on eBay. You can buy it in like bulk, like 5-6 tubes at a time. They'll last forever. They will dry up on you though if you leave the cap off too long. So you got to kind of not let it dry up on you. You don't want to leave it in the heat or the cap off for the night. So I don't have to worry about going around this part of the leg. It's just mostly around here. So now it's kind of hard to see this stuff though because I'm doing gray primer and gray putty, but it's not the end of the world either. So I'm just going to do that on that leg. I'm going to do it on this leg. And then what I'll do is I'll grab some sandpaper right now and give you a little bit of an idea what I use for sandpaper. It's really great stuff. And then hopefully I can start attaching this arm back onto it. So as far as sandpaper goes, this is my to-go sandpaper. These are soft-back sanding sponges from 3M. It's 02604. Now this is the fine stuff. This stuff is absolutely amazing. I love it. You can use this with water. But if you use it with water, they sort of like, you lose a lot of your sandpaper like gritness to it after a while. So you want to kind of like cut slices off. So I usually, one block will, you know, I can cut like a chunk of it off here and there and stuff, use it in water and stuff. So after you use this stuff enough, this stuff gets a little bit finer than what it was when it's brand new. So you have to kind of like keep rotating it, because this stuff you sort of lose it over time. But it's really great. I always buy it in a box. I think it's a 20 pads or so. You get it on like Amazon or whatever. They also have a rough one. This stuff is really good too, but you know, with sandpaper, it's rough, it's fine, it's fine. So even though you might lose some of this and it feels like it's fine, it's still sanding rough. But like even with this, you can cut pieces off and use stuff. So this stuff is great for like this area here. So we sort of had the skin, you know, the skin's kind of curved, but we had that little thing. So when you use this stuff over there, you're kind of helping keep that curve while you're sanding. So it's really good. I still use regular sandpaper for a lot of my items, so it's not just these pads. I use all kinds of sandpaper. If you really want to though, like if you get into like buffing, you can get like a really fine grade stuff where this is like buffing tools. These are really good too. So that's kind of like my arsenal of sandpaper. I have tons of it in the garage. I have it all over the place, so there's all kinds of sandpaper, but these are what I usually use the most. This stuff is really great, and they last a fairly long time. So that's good. That's probably what I'll use to sand a lot of this down. So next step is I am going to get this arm reattached again. So I gotta get this all lined up and everything. And then hopefully I can get a lot of this putty and stuff done too off camera. Get these legs all nice and smooth out. And then from there we might close out the first part of the video, because I have to see about getting that 3D stuff printed and then get that stuff sent to me. So in the next video, hopefully if I get that stuff, we'll plan on realigning her right arm. We'll make a copy of the 3D print of the hand, because we can't use that for the original sculpt. And then hopefully we could get all that set up where we could start doing all the detailing work on her. So I cleaned up a lot of the back here, so we got a lot of this all cleaned up and everything. So looking over this more, the way it works is this leg and this leg was casted up separate than the body, and then what they did is they put the fishnets in there and then they glued in the legs and everything. So that's how this piece was assembled. So there's a lot of gaps underneath in here, so I want to kind of clean up a lot of this and a little bit around the edging around here. And then I think what I decided to do is, because we're going to build out her sweater and that's going to be kind of puffy a little bit, it might look a little bit top heavy up there. So I think what I'm going to do is sort of kind of build out the legs a little bit, give her a little bit thicker calf muscles, build out the booty a little bit more, and the thighs just a little bit, not too crazy, just build it a little bit more. And then I think that'll probably be a good ending point for this first part of the video. And then hopefully then we'll figure out what we're going to be doing in the next couple steps with the next video. Okay, so I had a chance to get into the garage today, and I kind of been buffing this down and sanding and tweaking. After I did that, I got some more areas here I needed to kind of fine tune a little bit more. I really like that we got a nice bubble butt on her. I think that's a really great look for her, especially when we do the skirt. So I think by adding the thicker part of her legs, really going to play more to the character now, only because once I add that heavy sweater on her, I think it would kind of go better with the thicker legs, because I really want to make sure her chest is a little bit bigger, and I want to make this sweater kind of like puffy. But the way this is going to work is I'm going to be sculpting the shoes first and then the socks. I'm going to kind of work down here, and then we're going to work our way up. I'm definitely going to have to do the skirt first, so the sweater kind of goes over the skirt. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of toying with the idea and thinking now. What's going to happen is I'll probably do the skirt not like this, but I think I'll do the skirt kind of like where it's kind of blowing in the wind or something, so we kind of get a little bit of a booty action. So I kind of think maybe blowing this way, and then maybe the hair kind of blow with it too. We'll see what happens. But so yeah, it's definitely shoes, socks first, skirt, and then the sweater. The sweater is going to be a little bit of a problem because when I'm working on it, and if I build that skirt, I got to be very careful I don't snap that skirt if it's fairly thin. So I'm going to have to sort of thicken it up a bit, but we'll get to that later. So I'm going to kind of finish fine-tuning this stuff, and we'll come back at the end and kind of show you what's going on. And then hopefully in the next video, one of two things will happen. One, we'll probably start working out the socks and shoes, and I got to really start planning out this arm here with the SD files that my friend is going to be printing for me. But we'll kind of go over that later once I get that stuff. And then we'll probably have to make a mold and cast it up and get that situated and kind of plan all this out. So it's a little bit tricky, but I think we're getting there pretty well, and I think this kind of really going to look out pretty well. I think I really like the legs. We got that, thicker look to her, but it's not overly done, which is kind of cool. Alright guys, so I thought this would be a great way to end each video in the series is by popping out my Black Canary in my own personal collection in the Besta, so this way we can see what we started with and where each work in progress is. So I can't do that with every video, but at least with this one we have a nice little bit of a bonus, so that way we can see what's going on, and maybe new people to the channel can get a better understanding of what's going on and how this stuff is evolving. So as you can see with the whole video in this one, we did a lot of the prep work, which was popping off the hair, stripping down the paint on the face, rebuilding the skull, working out the neck in here, so this way when I build a turtleneck it's a little bit easier to deal with and it fits in correctly. We took the glove off here, we cut her arm here, so this is removable because her sweater is going to end here and it's going to be bunched up over in here. The arm broke off sadly, but we fixed that, but it doesn't really matter how messy it looks because all this is going to get covered up anyway by the sweater. And we really don't need to do anything with the outfit because this is all going to be covered up too, so it's kind of cool that this doesn't really make a difference. We will build out the chest a little bit more down the line, but for right now it's looking pretty good. So in the beginning of the video I said I wasn't really going to work on the legs or anything, but I decided to give her a nice booty, thicker legs and everything, because I figure once the sweater is kind of bunchy on her, it might fit a little bit better having a little bit of thickness to her. Plus, I send a lot of stuff out to my friends and pictures that when we have, get-togethers and we talk statues and we sculpt and we do stuff. So they kind of give me feedback every once in a while and stuff. So they said, why don't you just thicken up the legs a little bit, this and that. And so it's always good to have a second opinion on stuff that you might not be missing or just something that they would want to see. So it works out pretty well. Other than that, we are pretty much ready to go with the shoes and the socks. But what's going to happen between now and the next video is I'm going to be doing a lot of tedious work, which is just priming, putty work, getting all this fine-tuned and sanded up, because this is where you're really going to see a lot of the skin tones and a lot of the body. So this is all got to be kind of clean before I go any further. And then hopefully in the next video we'll be able to attach this arm and set it up with the STL files I'm having printed out. We'll kind of get into that to the next video, but that's something I'm thinking about that might help me with customs down the line. Sometimes I come across statues that are broken or damaged, that are missing hands or a head or something, and I don't always have parts, and it's always hard to resculpt from scratch for this stuff. So a lot of people now are actually sculpting hands and random parts and putting it on STL sites that you can actually download and print. So we're kind of go over that next video, which actually might help this out and make things a little bit easier. Plus, open up a world of possibilities for me on customizing statues that are just kind of like I just need parts for. Sometimes just adding a part's easier than sculpting from scratch and all that stuff. So that's pretty much where we're at. So I'm really excited with this project so far. Things are looking pretty well. I'm really liking the way these legs are looking on her. We got a nice little thickness to her as well now. Feels a little bit more superhero-ish too. She's got a little bit more, you know, booty going on. So I think once we add that skirt onto her as well, and we have it like kind of flowing a little bit, we'll kind of be able to see all the booty and stuff. So it should work out pretty well. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I think this is going to be a really fun project where it's just a character you won't see in this type of a scale or this kind of a pose or look. So we'll see how this ends up. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll be back with some more videos, and hopefully part 2 will be up fairly soon.